So in this video, I'm going to be responding to Jeranism. Again, I know some of you might be tired of hearing me talk about Jeranism, sorry if that's the case, but he does have quite a bit of a following. Seems like there's quite a few people that agree with him, and he says a lot of things, so there's a lot to respond to, and he kind of presents it in a way that makes it easy for me to respond to it. So here's him on the moon landing.
But I'm more looking at the ones who are watching who have completely shut off anything outside of what they currently believe. And I'm just asking you for one video, open your mind, please. I beg you, just this one time. Pretend that you aren't the smartest human on earth. Understand that I don't claim to know every fact. And to be honest, there's some facts that will never be known simply because they've been hid too well. But if you're a human being with a brain and you're not afraid of your own stupidity, it's okay to question things. You know, what does that hurt?
I do question things, and I have an open mind. That's not the same thing as being gullible, mind you. I'll take anything into consideration, but in order for me to be convinced by it, it needs to hold up to reasonable criticism and scrutiny. I'm not afraid to accept new things, but I do need good reason to.
So all I ask you guys is to listen, be open to what I'm saying, and then question me, debunk me, prove me wrong. You know, disagree with me. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That's science.
Okay, fair enough. Now, keeping in mind that science rejects explanations that constantly rely on ad hoc hypotheses, let's do this. And he starts off by giving out loads of claims about loads of things, and quite frankly, they're all BS, but I want to skip to the point of his video, which for some reason starts at about 14.5 minutes in. You have to sit through 14.5 minutes for him to actually talk about what the title of his video says.
So let's move on to the moon. And I have a question for you intellectuals. Help me out here. Now, you've heard a lot of people ask with the spinning Earth, why can't a plane lift off from New York, wait for the spinning Earth, then drop when San Francisco arrives? Now, we understand that you say Earth's atmosphere moves with the spinning Earth, so it would not be possible. So I have a question. If the Earth were really going 66,000 miles per hour around the sun, then that means, using my moronic brain, that the moon must also be going 66,000 miles per hour as it follows and rotates us. So why don't your silly spaceships just get out into space and then wait? Flying to the moon took us 3 days, but if you just fly up and wait, it would take you less than 4 hours. Or is the atmosphere of space also like the atmosphere of the Earth? Please do tell, because it just makes zero sense.
Well, of course, it doesn't make any sense when you don't seem to understand relative motion. Let me put it this way. You are looking at this from the perspective of the sun, so sure, we're moving pretty fast. But how on earth, pun intended, do you expect us to just hit the brakes and stop moving? From our perspective on Earth, that would look like we are moving away from the Earth at 66,000 miles per hour. So to do that, we'd have to apply enough force to get us to that speed. And just as much force to get us to stop before we crash into the moon. So that would be entirely inefficient and ridiculous. Since this is just a trip between the Earth and the moon, then we look at this from the Earth's perspective, and maybe the moon's perspective as well. And the moon isn't exactly hurling towards us, it's going around us. So the efficient way to do it is to use less fuel by going slower and going ahead of the moon instead of behind it, so that way the moon approaches the spacecraft instead of the craft chasing after the moon. And that's exactly what we did. That's what we would expect.
And are you just going to go run to NASA and ask them? They seem to be the only authority you can go to for space-related questions, huh? And don't cross them. You could end up like Gus Grissom, or how about the safety inspector, Thomas Ronald Barron?
For those that don't know, Gus Grissom died during an Apollo 1 test, and Thomas Barron was fired from NASA and then died when a train hit his car. And of course there's no evidence of any conspiracy behind this. With the amount of people that NASA has employed over the many years that they've been active, and with this sort of dangerous stuff that they do, you're gonna have a few deaths. It's a tragedy, I know, but I'm gonna need some proof when you assert that they were murdered on the grounds that you don't understand how space travel works.
But I've seen all the sites, and I know who you guys are. You're the ones who like to be on the side of the intellectuals. You don't want to be the ones being laughed at, so when you go to a site and 2 or 3 people make good points about the moon landing being a hoax, and then you get people laughing and berating them, well, you want to be on the side of those laughing, never the side of those being laughed at. Difference between you and me is simple. I don't give a
Look, I don't care. I don't care whether or not I'm part of an in-group. And for me personally, the conclusions that I make are my own, and I do my own research all the time about pretty much everything. But it's not like flat earthers don't berate their criticizers.
Acting like the REIT? Well, maybe it's not quite an act, but I'm getting paid really well to do it. And I ask stupid questions of flat earthers.
What's up, hiith? How you doing today? Therefore, you, sir, are a f***ing liar. That's why I called you a
I mean, hell, I'm sure you could just look at the comments on this video. We have assholes on both sides, and I will actually delete comments from both sides equally, as they leave comments that are just insulting and don't add anything to the conversation. I am a self-made skeptic, no matter who makes fun of me for it, and no matter what unpopular opinions it may bring, and I feel no social pressure because I have no friends.
Look at these guys at the post-flight press conference for Apollo 11. Do they seem happy to you? Now, don't get me wrong. Don't come back at me and say that's not proof, because I'm not saying it is proof. What I'm saying is you need to add everything into the story and make your own conclusion, not what other men say.
Okay, cool, but I don't understand how this is relevant. He goes on to say that the guys in Apollo 11 went on to live unhappy lives, which, I mean, so? This doesn't point to a conspiracy, because this doesn't point to anything. I mean, hell, if they were part of a conspiracy, I would think that they would live happy lives, but he doesn't explain the connection, so I'm not going to bother.
Now, I'm absolutely positive that anybody in their right mind would have to agree that if we did go to the moon, it was man's greatest achievement. Imagine how well kept those records would be. Well, I hope you've done your research and know that NASA has lost all the data, the blueprints, the records from the Apollo missions. Lost them. Following the Freedom of Information requests in America, NASA admitted it had lost all the original video footage of the Apollo missions.
No, they're not lost, they're just misplaced. Only the ones from Apollo 11. When I was recording this, I thought he was talking specifically about Apollo 11, but turns out only Apollo 11 has the misplaced reels. And there was never an FOIA request for them. As far as I can tell, it was just an informal request from some retirees, and that led to an informal search. It seems like they're not sure whether they're at the Goddard Space Flight Center or at another location within the NASA archiving system. That being said, there is quite a bit of restored video from Apollo 11 on NASA's site and even uploaded to YouTube. You can also download hours worth of audio to listen to if you so desire, also from NASA's site. Not to mention the amount of photos that are available from the mission. And they have plenty of first-generation copies and even some original video from Apollo missions 12 through 17.
I mean, what is this picture that shows a man drawing the moon on a big screen, making sure it's meticulous and perfect, with a track next to it? I mean, what do you think that picture is of?
That looks like Project LOLA, or Lunar Orbiting and Landing Approach, which was a simulator built at Langley to study problems related to landing on the lunar surface. The pilot in the cockpit would move along a track past these murals, which would accustom him to the visual cues for controlling a spacecraft in the vicinity of the moon. But That is, according to NASA, who were the ones to release this image in the first place. If this is the sort of thing that they use to fake the moon landing, then I don't think that they would release these images for all to see. And if you zoom in on the model, which we can do since NASA provides the original full-sized image for us, then you can see that it looks pretty unconvincing and obviously airbrushed. They weren't using this to fool anyone. Though I must say that I like that guy's belt. That's a nice belt. I want that belt. And sadly, it looks like that's all the time that I have for this video. And there are so many more claims that Jaren makes, but I'm gonna have to cover those at a later date. And I will. So, thank you guys for watching this video, and goodbye.
Hello, I'm Hiith McClure, and you might have seen me on YouTube lately.